Hi, this is a short video to give you a hand filling in your Garda vetting form before commencement here in BCFE. This is the form here. It's a relatively simple form to fill in, though I have seen over the past few years a lot of students making some really common mistakes. What happens when you make a mistake, the form will eventually be sent back to you to be corrected, and unfortunately that will create a massive time delay in terms of getting vetted. And if you are conducting or being involved in work experience here in the college, that could delay the start of your work experience. So you will have got a form already and also a sample version of the form which has already been filled in for you. Have a look at the different sections and see where your details slot into those particular sections. So just a few tips before we actually get started in terms of filling in the form. Be as honest as possible when actually writing in your information. Any omissions or any lies will be caught out quite quickly by the vetting office. So try to be as accurate as possible to ensure your form comes back on time. Always use a black pen and also use block capitals when filling in the form. It just makes it easier for people to read, and it means your form will come back that little bit quicker as well. I suppose the most important thing to remember here is simply just to take your time. People who rush into the forms tend to make mistakes quite quickly, and again, the whole point of this video is that you don't make any of these mistakes. If you're not sure of information as well, maybe ask a parent. There's quite a lot of information from a good few years ago that you'll actually need, so ask them to remind you of that piece of information rather than taking any kind of guesses. So just actually have a look at the form itself. I would say that there's four main sections here. We firstly have a section for your personal details, so your name, your date of birth, etc. And then we have your address section here, which I'll get into in a little bit. On the back of the form, remember, be sure to turn over. We then have a section about past offences. This may or may not apply to you, but make sure to have a look at it anyway. And then at the very end, well, halfway through the form, we have what's known as the declaration. This is where you're going to write in the name of your course, you're going to sign your name, you're going to print your name, and finally, you're going to date the form. So make sure to have a look at both sides and make sure to fill in anything which is relating to you. There are two sections at the very back of the form itself at the bottom, which you're not going to have to worry about. So just be careful to fill in what you need to fill in yourself. So just having a look at the front of the form again, we have the personal details section. One of the main mistakes that we see here are students mixing up the forename and the surname. It seems quite simple, and yet we see that mistake again and again. So just as an example, your forename is your first name, so for instance Sarah or John, and your surname then will be your second name, such as Byrne or Dunn. So make sure not to mix the two up. We also then have your date of birth. One of the most common mistakes that we see students make is putting in the wrong year of birth. They might put in the current year as opposed to the year they were actually born. So if you're born in 1994, make sure to put 1994 down on it, not 2013. One of the other sections here in the personal details is that of an alias. Now, if you are, for instance, known to police or known to the wider public by a different name to that on your birth certificate, you'll be putting in that piece of information there. If, of course, you're just known by your name, as the birth certificate would say, just leave it. Well, instead of leaving it blank, in fact, the best thing to do across this form is to put in NA to say non-applicable. So never leave a box blank. If you can, put in NA, because if you leave a box blank, the form will be sent back to you, and again, it will just delay that process a little bit more. Okay, so just getting on to the address section of the form, this is one of the areas where we see quite a lot of mistakes made and quite a lot of omissions, which slows down people's Garda vetting process. So what you need to do here is list all the addresses from the year of your birth up until this particular current year, 2013. Now for some people that could be 10, 15 addresses, for other people it could be simply one address. So just make sure to have whatever addresses you need to have and put them in there very, very carefully, making sure not to miss out on any section at all. If, for instance, though, there's some section where you simply don't have a relevant piece of information for it, again, be careful to put in NA. Again, this is the section where most people make small little mistakes because they might leave something out. Again, all years must be accounted for. So say, for instance, if you're born in 1994 and 1998 is not accounted for here in the addresses, the form will be sent back to you and you'll have to redo it, and again, it just takes more and more time. So pay extra special attention to this particular piece here. Okay, so just looking onto the second page, at the very top there's a section here about offences that you might have been convicted of. Again, this may or may not apply to you, so if you have been convicted of an offence, tick yes, and if you haven't, tick no. If you have ticked yes, then you're going to have to fill in the box just below, so follow those details there and be careful not to omit anything at all. Okay, finally then you have the declaration at the very end. So this is where you simply have to put in the name of your course, and that should have been already put on a letter to you in response to your application. So if you're doing pre-nursing at the start of September next year, or this year, excuse me, make sure to put that piece of information in. Finally then, sign it, print your name and date it, and you're all done. So one last tip, have a look at the sample form and have a look at the tips letter which have been sent in to you, and you should have no problem at all with this. Thanks.